And let's talk about the Zeus stuff now, because obviously that's going to be interesting. Just purely on a gameplay perspective, evaluating this move is, I mean, it's huge for Hanwha Life. Hanwha Life obviously mega splashing out.
Oh, but that's probably the worst part about this move, Monty. Like I say, it's actually how it was all framed in the discussion. Because, bro, you would think the way this was being framed, like Zeus was just sent to fucking Frederick Brion by his agents and he doesn't want to go there. Like, for even Joe Marsh's responses, Monty, were making it sound like, for real, like T1 is the only place that's, like, good for Zeus to be, if you know what I mean. Like, we're all just going to pretend for real. Like, even though we speculated on this move, like, doesn't this, like, essentially, this is, I think Dom made a similar point. I agreed, which is if a player leaving your team and then in theory, like, an equivalent player joining makes your team worse, it wasn't your team was better, that player was better. Like, this player makes Hanwha better and T1 worse. Like, why are we pretending like, you know, Hanwha sucks? Because actually, that's the biggest part about this move is what was never even discussed in the T1 drama, which is the Hanwha side of it. Like, the Hanwha side is huge, Monty. And also, here's another thing, crazy idea. I know T1 fans will hate this, Monty, but this means fucking Zeus is getting paid now. He actually has like a nice big contract and all big fucking deals. So this is enormous. I actually think this is one of the biggest moves I've ever seen in an off-season.
I mean, he must have gotten paid an enormous amount. And like Hanwha is definitely like deep into the luxury tax territory. They are almost certainly the most expensive roster at this point in time. We know they really splashed out on him because he, you know, T1 kept coming back and like trying to bid up. And it seems like we'll get to what the agency did and said.
Yes.
But you know, it does seem like they were coming back and they were trying to get more money out of T1, and T1 said, hey, we'll match the offer, meaning that they were lower than that offer earlier, almost certainly, or at least they believed.
Which, by the way, also means, Monty, that this now at the end, this is what I actually thought was very notable. I thought, Monty, especially because of how apologetic the agency was, even in disputing the facts, I thought what's going to happen here is actually the genie's going to go back in the bottle, which is because everyone has to exist in this Kesper ecosystem. The agency, because the move's done, basically, is going to almost imply, like, yeah, maybe we were, like, you know, a bit unprofessional how we handled it. But obviously, you don't actually admit culpability. You just sort of go, like, you know, it could have been done differently, and we apologize for the hurt feelings and all that jazz. Because I actually think the weirdest part is if you look at the statement by the agency at the end, Monty, where they gave that breakdown of literally like the dates of what was happening, that literally it makes it quite clear it can no longer be that both parties have a different perspective. T1 flatly outright said they made an offer and there was no counter offers made at any point. The agents basically say that T1 came back something like 3 or 4 times, Monty, with counter proposals and things. So someone has to be lying at that point in time. That's actually the part I thought was astonishing, is that the agency's action at the end, even though it looked like they were sort of agreed and being polite, like, you know, we do sorry to T1 and all that, like, actually at the end, someone has to be lying in this scenario. Someone's not telling the truth. Like, in fact, factually, it was quite extreme. Either essentially like T1 offered one time and then got frozen out, or they were doing the deal the whole time. It just never got to where they wanted. Who the fuck knows, right? I also will just add that, and I don't claim to know who's telling the truth or not, mate. It's fucking hard on this one.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone's motivated to lie, potentially, right?
I think honestly, and you know, insane T1 stands are not going to want to hear this. Here's my take as before we go into why I have this take in breaking down all the evidence. I just think Zeus wanted to leave, guys. I think he just wanted to go to Hanwha, and he didn't want to have a confrontation with his old team. And what I think probably happened is that
as well, because you know that whole thing about we want to meet in person. I took that as like that's the T1 last move because you're trying to coerce him in person with all the respect and the Korean shit, aren't you? So if I'm Zeus, by the way, in that scenario, Monty, I even speculated this. I either might tell my agent or my agent might tell me, don't go to the meeting, bro. Like that's the only way they'll get you at the end is if you go to that bloody meeting, they'll lay it on thick with all the sob story. So if you just don't go, and if you already know, like you say in your heart, you don't want to join anyway, it's going to be awkward. Who the fuck wants to go? That's like having to go and meet your girlfriend in person and tell them why you're breaking up with her. Like, just leave it.
Before we get to my take, let's talk about why Zeus would want to go to Hanwha. First off, Hanwha is the defending champions of the LCK, who did beat T1 with Zeus on it twice in both the upper and lower bracket in order to actually get to and win those finals. So if you're thinking, hey, I lost to these guys, but I'm a fuckload better than Thorin, how good could we be if I was on this team instead, right? And especially because I wouldn't say Zeus was the biggest problem in that series. Like Peanut clapped Owner in some of those games.
You said Zeus, but you meant Thorin.
Yeah. Like, But I mean, Zeus in the matchups between Hanwha and T1 that happened.
I see what you mean, right? Yeah, of course, yeah.
Like Peanut clapped Owner in some of those games, and I think if you're Zeus, it was probably a pretty frustrating series because you most likely felt that you weren't the reason why you were losing, and maybe you want a change of scenery. Because here's the thing, guys. All of the narratives around T1 are fantastic when they win Worlds, but they were literally one game away from not even making Worlds. And if that happens, there's no way T1 re-signs this whole roster. The only reason they didn't re-sign Zeus or make any of the moves besides the current long-term contract they had with Faker was because T1 didn't know what they wanted to do before they won Worlds. T1 was surprised they won Worlds.
Themselves didn't have faith that they would win Worlds. That implies Monty directly, of course. Yeah.
Like literally, you had all year to try and negotiate with these guys, and you could have locked here. If you're T1, by the way, you could have locked them up. If you really believed, you could have locked them up when they were at an all-time low during summer. And some of those guys probably would have been happy to get long-term contracts during that period. And the reason why Zeus waited to become a free agent was because they won Worlds and he wanted to test the market because now he's a back-to-back two-time world champion and he's a super good top laner. And so if they had actually, halfway through the year tried to negotiate a 3-year extension with Zeus, maybe he would have signed it at that time. But the thing is that nobody, T1 management included, believed that they would win the world championship. And so at no point did they try and make a good offer to them because clearly they were evaluating their options as well. And so that's the result of this. And do I blame T1 for doing that? No, that was the logical thing to do. I absolutely think that it would have been crazy for them to re-sign all of these players. Imagine how hard we would have been laughing if halfway through the summer split or right after summer playoffs, they had re-upped all the player contracts. Now, we would have looked dumb because they would have won Worlds.
What's funny is at the time we would have said, probably the wrong move. You should wait till the offseason and sign all these big name players. But obviously the joke is that they would, in the end of the last laugh, they would look like geniuses, sign them at the minimum amount. By the way, there's another thing, about this whole move I found disgusting. It's presented, Monty, that this wasn't the right thing for Zeus, and the best thing for Zeus is to be in T1. And then I even saw the maddest one is I find a fan tweet, Monty, I put at the end of my video, where someone goes, think about how broken this guy's brain is to never be able to blame T1. He goes, Zeus, Owner and Gumayusi and Keria should sue Zeus because they all signed lower contracts with the promise that he was joining. It's like, so you're saying the org you love lowballed the fuck out of reigning world champions? Like, when do you start to hate the org? Like, when does the org become the bad guy here? Because that's the part I also... The craziest thing is this, Monty. As far as I can tell, for real, Joe Marsh and T1 think that when you win them 2 world championships, you're entitled to be lowballed, so all 4 of you can again just play with Faker, who makes $5 million a year or something. Like, what even is that? Why does that not make you the douchebag as the org? Like, remember, it's not even like Faker is old Faker 1v9ing. Like, he's even the guy who, you're carrying as Zeus or Gumayusi, but you're gonna fucking sign for, whatever, a fifth of what he's making. That doesn't even make sense. I find that part gross. Because, Monty, in his final, thing of, the statements in the AMA, Joe Marsh constantly kept saying this thing where he kept saying that our aim was to get all of these guys, the best salary in the world for their position. That is such a bad faith statement, Monty, when you consider, if you know with the LPL as well, how much people make in every position. There's no universe Gumayusi is anywhere close to, a ruler contract. It's not even plausible, bro. It's actually kind of gross that why does T1, Monty, get to win everything, get every possible advantage? We were discussing if EWC counted, they would have even got a salary cap hit reduction. They're getting all the fucking world skins. That's going to be millions. They were doing all this advertising. By the way, there's a hilarious clap as well. Crazy idea, dickhead. Don't sell merch that then you don't have the player signed for. And then the fans, are you ready? That's probably my favorite part. These fans are so shitty and petulant at T1. The T1 fans, guys, en masse, cancelled merch buys that were for 2024 merch, as in the one that already happened and isn't about next year. They're so bad, their own fans, that a T1 fan is the guy who go, you know what, here's the analogy for you, right? I'll give you the joke, Monty, is like back in the day, I remember it was in like the 2000s. There was a Stanley Cup where the Vancouver Canucks were up 3-1 and they actually lost from 3-1 and they lost in game 7. So unsurprisingly, Monty, because they lost in game 7 after they thought they were going to win, they like rioted and burned the city up. And at the time, I was friends with someone who's from Los Angeles and he goes, bro, at least they do it when they lose. He said when the Lakers win, they burn the city. Yeah. And I'm like, what? But when they win, what do you do when you win? Like, this is the maddest thing about T1. They destroy their own org. Like, bro, if one thing goes wrong, they just start going, well, then fucking burn it all, burn everything in this motherfucker. Like, no, why are you doing that? Like, you're destroying you're the one destroying T1. They need that money.
Why would you be canceling? Why would you be canceling the merch from the year that made you happy? Yeah. Like, don't you want to remember the times with those players? It's crazy. But you know, I think as we discuss this Zeus deal, the timeline becomes really important because
you know that meme as well, Monty, of the mask of the guy laughing but he's crying underneath. They're all doing that hard cup of like, well, I love Thorin actually. Hey, welcome Thorin. Hey Thorin, I'm gonna have good get to hear you guys. Like, there's no way you're hating him. You're trying to hate him.
T1 fans, just wait until you see Thorin's Camille compared to Zeus's Camille. You just wait. You just wait for that Thorin Camille game. Go back, watch that one in the finals versus Genji. You tell me if there's a difference between Zeus's Camille and Thorin's Camille real quick. I think you'll find there are a few upgrades that Zeus makes on your roster. But the thing about Zeus too is that, you know, after they win, he wants to test the free agency market because remember that on November 19th is the official opening of free agency. But until that point, Thorin, guess who has exclusive rights to negotiate with Zeus? That would be his current team, of which he is currently contracted to. That would be T1. And that means that, and Thorin said, no, I want to test free agency. Now, obviously Zeus. Zeus. Now, obviously there's tampering going on because spoiler guys, there's always tampering.
There always is, Carl.
There always is with everybody at all times. That's how these free agency things work. That's why players are signing, you know, contracts at midnight the moment, you know, or the morning of the 19th. If you
notice, Monty, when we were at the stage where it was just like third-party leaks and hearsay, people kept doing this thing, Monty, where they were like, and he'd made his whole mind up within X amount of hours. It's like, no, that's just how long he had to actually physically start to sign. Like, the whole point is, obviously, some people can make their decision up 1 minute before 9 a.m. on that day, Monty. Like, you've already had the conversation, it's just you can't officially sign because it's not really that, like, you're not thinking about anything. It's just you can't act on the move, obviously. It's why I point out, by the way, that when you see these cheap esports leaks that are like, this player's signed with this player, it's like, not, listen, unless they literally have signed a contract and been released from it, they haven't. Like, that's, technically, that could still end. And, like, Fnatic could come in 1 second after the market opens and sign them. Like, that's not for sure at all, 'cause that's how League works.
And I can just tell you guys that I know from talking to teams that there are people after midnight on the 19th of November running around Korea to different cities in the middle of the night, meeting with players. And some of these deals get signed at 4 a.m. or whatever. You know what I mean? Because that's how long it takes for, you know, the players to think about it. The lawyers are there. It's a whole fucking big hullabaloo, right?
To refer back to that earlier thing, Monty, did you also infer it similarly? Where you notice one of the main T1 angles was the idea that, like, they were making negotiations, they were potentially offering him stuff, but then when it didn't go the way they liked, they were like, whoa, pause, we have to get you in a room with me directly, just me talking to you directly.
I do think that's...
No. I can't believe fans were just ignoring that. That was so sinister. Bro, what was that?
No. I think that's actually just common practice, and I do think that it's good policy. So here's the reason. So basically, before we skip ahead to that, here's the timeline. You know, Hanwha obviously jumps on Zeus immediately. And by the way, it's not like this negotiation was zero risk to Hanwha Life because they could have re-signed Thorin in their exclusive period. And Keen was already signed sometime in the morning of the 19th. So he was off the table. And remember, the top lane is pretty damn thin in LCK. It's like Keen and Zeus are clearly the best. Then there's Thorin, who's like substantially worse, but still good. And then there's literally everybody else. And so if you're not getting one of those really elite top laners, you're seriously trying to make a stab at winning worlds, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to make that run. But it is, you know, basically Hanwha like called their shot and they said, we're gonna let Doran's contract expire and like let the chips fall where they may, and we're gonna try and go after the whale, which was Zeus, who is the last kind of uncontracted player. And I'm sure HLE made an offer to Keen as well. Like I'm sure they did that, but Keen was the first kind of domino to fall, and he was the one who signed with Gen G. And so now we've got these two top laners in play, and HLE I'm sure was like blowing Zeus's phone up all night. So was T1. We get to the morning. It seems like contracts are being offered. T1 starts to send contract offers to Zeus. Now, the reason why I think the in-person meeting is necessary, and the reason why most of the time these negotiations are done in person, is because a negotiating tactic for the player and the agent can just be to sit there and let the phone ring and then wait another hour and then let the phone ring again. And so what happens is that the team that keeps calling is basically blindly negotiating against themselves. So they could be like, here's an example. They could be like, in the morning, they're like 9 a.m. It's like, hey, Zeus, we have $1 million a year contract for you. Zeus sits there. He doesn't meet them. Okay, Zeus, we have a $1.2 million a year contract for you. But you don't know if Hanwha is increasing their offer or not. And if you are serious, if T1 was serious and they really wanted to match the offer that Zeus was getting, they kind of have to get into a room with him so they can make sure that the number is real from Hanwha, and they can put the last best offer on the table and be like, this is it. We're walking out of this room in 10 minutes. Sign it or else. Right. And so
but that's also the part I found weird, though, because you've waited till free agency to do that. So, for example, like while you're doing that, I can't be taking calls. Like I can't be doing the Hanwha Life side of it. But remember, and the other part which people do ignore is, look, who knows whether it's hearsay or not, but it's implied some of the LPL teams were inquiring too. People also made this sound like it was just like you sign with T1 or not. Like you have all these options. Like to me, the real problem I have with this topic, Monty, is the most bad faith part of what Joe Marsh says is this notion that like it's like they couldn't know until the very end, like he's not joining. Like, bro, the second he says, I want to test the free market, and then allows the time to actually open on the free agency day, you already have to in your brain know you might have lost him. Like now the second he goes to the free agency day, there's a greater than 0% chance.
But he wasn't negotiating with them. He just like refused to do it. So what else are you supposed to do? Right. He said,
is that even true though?
Who knows?
That's the problem. The whole thing relies on RT1 liars or not. And spoiler, I don't consider them a truthful organization. By the way, it's the same organization already publicly claimed that fucking faker's dream is to have dinner with Mohammed bin Salman. So I'm believing that org now, about dates and shit like that, man. No, I think I'll go ahead and say you're liars. How about that? How about them odds?
And Hanwha, the thing is that T1 fans and Joe Marsh were very offended by was that Zeus wouldn't meet them for the meeting. But it's like he's not obligated to meet them. And, I feel like, Thorin, T1 probably put a lowball offer on the table earlier in that day or during free agency. And I think it pissed Zeus off. I think that explains why he wouldn't want to meet. And here's the thing. Even if they were in that meeting and they matched HLE's offer. So first off, HLE might bid up again. You don't know that. But also, is it really the same offer? Because on the one hand, you have to play on T1 again with all of these expectations, whereas Hanwha Life without Doran and with Zeus is just kind of an objectively better roster. So you're getting paid at best. I feel like you're getting paid the same amount of money to be on what is likely going to be a worse team. Because sure, you could be like T1 super clutch. They win every Worlds. Well, I would say the consistency, at least towards the end of this last year was definitely trending in Hanwha Life's favor. Right. And this is their one point of weakness. If Zeus thinks he's that guy, then if I was Zeus and I can do a fuck ton better than Doran, how good could this team be with the top laner as good as me, which was their major point of weakness? Maybe you are all in on that eventuality, right? So I think like it's not what T1 fans and what Joe Marsh, the way it came across was that if we had just gotten into that room and if we had just offered the same amount of money, Zeus would have taken our deal, where I don't think that's necessarily a foregone conclusion. In fact, I still think the Hanwha deal is better for Zeus. So
I find this whole thing gross because actually in this particular case, like, look, I actually think the Hanwha is a better team for Zeus. But even if I'm looking at the deals, I'm just thinking of being in Zeus's position, Monty. I've just won my second Worlds, which, by the way, in the 2 Worlds we won, I was massively influential. I was one of the best players. In fact, I was arguably like the best T1 player the whole year, if you want to look at the whole thing. Like, who was better? What, Gumayushi maybe? That's about it. So to me, surely I deserve the following. A long contract to be built around. By the way, that's the other thing I can't handle. Why is it okay that they just treat this guy like he's disposable? Like, all right, well, you won Worlds, so I guess you can have one more year. No, dickhead. How about I go to an org where they're glad I won Worlds and want to build around me and make me the central piece, not old-ass faker who at any moment can retire, any moment can just disappear, leave the roster in the lurch, and we'll just have what Popey by this logic in the lineup again. So I deserve, 1, a long-term contract, and 2, crazy idea, Monty. I'm a 2-time world champion. Can I get the bag? Why am I? Yep. Why is that an alien concept? Like, you know, we hear all these stories about people in the LPL and LCK getting giant. Can I have that? I'm the best player in the world. Bro, Dom is having the conversation every stream. Is Zeus the GOAT top laner? So I'm the GOAT in my prime, a 2-time reigning world champion now. Can I have the bag? Can I have the millions of dollars? And then people did that thing, Monty, where in the comment, this is where you know people completely left the reservation. I saw some reports that said the difference was only 500 million Korean won. The difference is only $327,000. Did you just say that out loud in esports winter in 2024? You daft fuck! Like, you know, do you hear what we said about this? That it's not the else. Listen, we're not. That's a line that could only have been said about 7 years ago with like Doublelift and some other fuck in the LCS discussing like their insane offers. Like, it's only had 400k extra. Like that. Those days are gone. Like 400k is huge. By the way, I've just won Worlds. That's the thing I don't get, Monty. You know, if you want to go from the cynical sports angle, you think about how sports athletes do it. Normally, when you win the championship, Monty, is by definition when you get the big contracts. That's the best leverage point in your whole career. Like, even role players do that. You know how often role players leave the like Super Bowl winning team? Because that's the one time you're going to get the big contract if you're not actually like the best player in the world. So I think it's actually also gross to imply that, like, let's be real. This whole tantrum, Monty, is actually about that dreaded fucking acronym, isn't it? The whole tantrum is that it has to be ZOFGK all at the same time because T1 fans like stands have shipped that they should play for another year together. So somehow that means even if we're lowballing everyone and offering people far from market value in what you could argue, Monty, in good faith is potentially the only moment in their career they will have this market value. They might never have it ever again. And instead you're telling them just accept a worse deal just to keep essentially like a fanfic of like 5 players playing together and loving each other and being best friends going, as opposed to even going, as you say, to a better lineup and potentially, you know what, the only real win is this, Monty. The real W is this. We actually now need for real Hanwha Life to just win everything, bro. Imagine they just like Grand Slam fucking 2025. That would be glorious because every dickhead T1 fan would be like, yeah, he should be in T1. Like, shut up, you fucking cretin.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.